on WAER. SU gets the fourth and final seed in the ACC tournament, but how did this evening matinee play out? The regular season finale between two ACC powerhouses. SU, though, trying to recover from back-to-back losses. A common theme in those, slow starts, but SU cured that problem earlier today.
For the first time in 4 games, Syracuse scores the opening goal. It's 1-0 Syracuse, courtesy of Michael Leo. 2 minutes into this game, 1-0 SU.
Attackman Owen Hiltz has played a ton of lacrosse at Syracuse, and in the redshirt senior's last game possible in the Dome, he made a quick splash.
But SU got it out there. Here's a shot by Owen Hiltz, and it goes in. Left on an island about 20 yards from cage. And the Orange right back in front with 9.5 minutes to go in this first quarter, up 2-1.
Then SU's offense went silent for the rest of the quarter. With no one on the attacking end stepping up, it was Jimmy McCool's time to shine.
And behind the cage, the ball goes Owen Duffy. Marked by Figueres, spins and shoots, and that one is into the stick of Jimmy McCool. Boy, Syracuse has really let a lot go towards McCool, but he's been up to the task so far. Still a 2-2 game with 2.5 minutes to go in the first quarter.
8 first quarter saves for McCool, not too bad. And one of the guys usually helping him out in the back made some noise upfield.
Picked up by Petramala, right towards crease, spinning and scoring. Creating some space on the near pipe. McCool dives for the ball. Petramala picks it right back up, goes over top of him.
So that was the Tar Heels ending the first half, firing on all cylinders. And with that, UNC took a 6-4 lead into the halftime break. Who could fix things for the Orange? Well, it was the first start for Finn Thompson in over a month, but that didn't matter.
In front for Thompson, fluttered onto the stick of Hilt, and he picks up the turnover in front of Cage. A shot and a goal! Finn Thompson gets his first goal since March. And it's a 6-5 North Carolina lead about a minute into this third quarter.
Then the offenses started churning. UNC went up 4, SU cut it to 2, and then with 2 seconds left, UNC navigated the clock and the crease perfectly.
8 seconds to go in the third quarter. Duffy towards Cage, shot and a goal! A buzzer beater met with some boos and a flag on the field. Boy, everything just went wrong for Syracuse in that final 10 seconds, and it's 10-7 North Carolina.
The momentum flipped in UNC's favor to end the third, and the Tar Heels marched into the fourth with that same energy.
Pass in front, quick shot and a score. Ryan Levy capitalizes on the man up and puts the Tar Heels up by 4. Just at the start of the fourth quarter. And Carolina's run keeps on cruising.
That goal, 18 seconds into the fourth quarter. UNC needed offense to put the game away. Syracuse needed offense to stay in the game, and the latter came true.
That's where they go when the shot clock gets low. English gets downhill, pass in front, shovel shot, and a score. Finn Thompson sends an arrow into the crowd, and Syracuse is within 3, 7 minutes to go in the fourth.
But SU fans didn't have much time to stand around and cheer. Syracuse broke down on both sides of the field, and UNC just kept taking advantage.
Sets up topside, gets a step going right, over to Petramala. He's got a step down, and he stings the bottom right corner. Dominic Petramala is taking over the JMA Wireless Dome. 6 goals today. Carolina leads 13-8. 5 minutes to go here in the fourth.
SU heated up in garbage time. A 4-0 run brought them within 2, but it was too little, too late.
And that'll do it. Syracuse made a late push, but it didn't matter. The Orange take a 3-game losing streak into the postseason. North Carolina escapes the Dome with a 14-12 win for the 3rd straight victory here on the Hill.
A crushing defeat for SU, and it doesn't get much easier. An ACC semifinal clash with top-ranked Notre Dame awaits this Friday. All right, it's time to hand out our Pepsi Player of the Game, and it's really an easy choice. There's one guy in mind, and it's Dominic Petramala. 6 goals, 20 shots, an assist, 2 ground balls, 2 caused turnovers. You name it, he did it. He stuffed the stat sheet, was everywhere on the offensive end, helped out a little bit with those ground balls and those caused turnovers as well. A big reason why North Carolina was up for a good chunk of this game. And yeah, it's an easy choice. Dominic Petramala, your Pepsi Player of the Game. All right, our next broadcast, it's the ACC tournament. This was the last regular season game for Syracuse men's lacrosse, so that tournament contest gets underway Friday, May 2nd at 5 o'clock. The ACC semifinals in Charlotte, North Carolina, between Syracuse, the 4 seed, and Notre Dame, the 1 seed. McCormick Remodeling countdown to face off at 4:30 for that 5 o'clock game, and you can tune into the double overtime after the game up until 8:30. A couple thank yous to hand out to Nico Horning, our producer, Luke Burgess, our engineer, Ben Chadwick, our man on radio replay, and the entirety of the WAER Sports Desk. That's not all the coverage for us, though. We've got the double overtime after the game up until 8:30, where you can call in, get your voice heard, 315-443-2011, the number to call to join in on the conversation. You can join our hosts, Dan Papillo and Hudson Ridley, breaking down this narrow defeat to end the regular season. All right, I've been Jared Valentin, your host of Orange Overtime, but we'll send it back to Dan and Hudson for the double overtime. Guys, a nail-biting game. Syracuse made it very close, but in the end, just fell short.
Yeah, almost had it, Jared. Thank you very much. I mean, Dan, that was a back-and-forth affair in the sense that it was back one way and forth the other. Syracuse coming up just short, falling to North Carolina 14-12 at home to cap off the regular season. I mean, man, they almost had it.
Yeah, Syracuse gave everything they had. They saved it all for the final 5 minutes, but it wasn't enough. And this game had a lot of implications, especially for that ACC tournament next week, now falling as the 4 seed.
It certainly did, and now Syracuse with 3 straight losses, it really makes you wonder why. Well, we have the answers why. We'll break that down on the double overtime and a whole lot more. We have you for less than an hour up until 8:30, so please stay with us here on 88.3 as the double overtime starts right now.
The game may be over, but our coverage on WAER is not. Here on the double overtime, we'll be breaking down all the highs.
English charging at Cage, has an angle, shoots high, and connects with the back of the net. Stevens ahead for English. 4 seconds left. English has to run in. He skips it. 5-hole and scores. 1 second left. We're headed to overtime.
Passes behind the cage. A cutter in front. A behind the back and a score. Syracuse strikes first against number 1. And Finn Thompson with the theatrics.
And the lows.
Fine, caught in a world of trouble. He turns it over. Duke on the fast break. 1-on-none. Zawada shoots high and scores high.
Right down Broadway to English. Rings it off the pipe and out. How many of those have we seen today? Devastation. Denver beats Syracuse 10-8 in the 2024 NCAA Tournament quarterfinal.
Delivering our hottest takes along the way.
How do you not get up for this game? Like, I understand Duke is more angry, but Syracuse has probably more to prove than Duke does.
This did not look like previous games against Notre Dame. You can tell Syracuse is a completely different team as it's been for the last 3 to 4 seasons. When you're giving up 20 turnovers, when less than half of your shots are on goal, you can't be considering yourself a top 5 team. You can't be considering yourself back.
And I was shocked that they dominated this much, but this just shows you the difference with this team. One of the reasons Syracuse held on to win this game is because when they went up 12-8 in the 4th quarter, they kept winning faceoffs and were able to take a minute 20 off the clock, which limited the possessions Hopkins had in the 4th period.
Get your voice heard by calling in at 315-443-2011 or by tweeting us at WAER Sports Talk. It's the double overtime, and it starts right now.
Syracuse scores the last 4 goals in a loss to North Carolina. Dan, it just wasn't enough. 14-12, the final score. UNC takes down SU. Dan Papillo alongside Hudson Ridley. And, I mean, Dan, this was the back-and-forth affair that you thought it would be. But, I mean, in the end, where was this the entire game? That's what I want to know. And if you have an answer for us, just call in and tell us. 315-443-2011. 2011. You can also text us at 315-556-3929, the number to hit our line there. I don't know where that was all game long.
No, you really just have no idea where it went. I mean, the game kind of completely flipped on its head once you got to the 3-minute mark in the fourth quarter. It was 14-8 North Carolina, and at that point, the fans were already headed for the exits. The game was over. Syracuse just found a second wind, and yeah, I think it's fair to say, where was this all game? You know, to shout out Frank the Tank. He loves to say, for my New York Mets, always teasing and never pleasing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what Syracuse men's lacrosse did in the final few minutes there.
Exactly. They showed they could do it. I mean, I think that's the worst part about it is, you know, they finally turned on the Jets. They finally said, okay, well, you know, we know how to win this game. Johnny Mullen finally started playing like he was a top 10, really, Fogo in the country. And still, somehow, it took until those final 3 minutes for them to do anything about it. I mean, if that 13th goal didn't get disallowed, they were 30 seconds away from tying that game after being down 6 just 2.5 minutes before. I really don't understand. And this has been kind of an issue with this team all season where it's like, sometimes they're on, sometimes they're not. We've driven it into everybody's heads all year that they can't play a full 60 minutes. And boom, they don't play a full 60 minutes. They play a full 3 at the end of the game, and there you go.
Yeah, I was about to say, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's inconsistency is all it really is. All season long, Syracuse men's lacrosse, they found a way to stay afloat, right? But there's been this consistent theme of inconsistency. Consistently inconsistent, we'll put it that way. Just every time not being able to figure it out in a full 60 minutes. You can go on runs, yes.
Yeah.
Lacrosse is a game of runs, you know. We saw it with Syracuse. You saw it with North Carolina today. But you have to do that at a point where you win the games. Yeah. In a game like this, you're already out of it when you're down 6 with 3 minutes left. If you want to find it then, sure, cool. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect, you're not going to be able to win the games that way. And if you want to compete, if you want to be that perennial powerhouse like you claim you are, you have to win these games.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at every single game this season, minus the Johns Hopkins game, they didn't play a full 60 minutes. And I mean, today might have been the best example of the fact that they could just be so much more than they are, which is really the most frustrating part to me. It's really bothering me, and if it's bothering you, please call in, let us know. 315-443-2011, the number to call. You can also text us at 315-556-3929 and interact with us on Twitter at WAER Sports Talk. I think the most frustrating part, Dan, when you really think about this, is it's those 60 minutes, of course, but it's almost the physicality over those 60 minutes is lacking. Look at the last 3 games that they've played. All 3 of those games have been losses, and in none of those 3 games did they want it more physically than the other team. Not a single one.
100%. And you saw it today as well. I mean, North Carolina was dominating, especially in the first half. You look at the possession, it was all North Carolina.
Yeah.
And they were just taking so many shots on the net that over time, Syracuse just didn't have the ball, and you kind of saw it. It seemed like they were getting frustrated, especially in the fourth quarter, where things kind of went off the rails, taking a lot of really bad penalties.
Yeah.
This team wants to be physical. You want to have that presence? Do it earlier in the game. Why are you waiting until the fourth quarter? The team needs to be more physical, and it showed today for sure.
Yeah, Syracuse had 3 penalties in this game, all 3 of them coming in the third and fourth quarter. It started with a Billy Dwan 2-minute unreleasable for hitting Petramala in the head and neck area right in front of the crease. I mean, he folded him.
Yeah.
He folded him, and that was one that was just so completely unnecessary that made me upset, where it was like he's going to get this shot off. The repercussion is your hit, right? But you don't want to lay the guy out, and you definitely don't want to put the stick to the head or neck when you're losing. I mean, I don't know if that was the most frustrating one, honestly. I was about to say that. But then you look at the other 2. Hoddle had a cross-check that was pretty much off the ball, kind of a little unnecessary, hit the guy from behind. That was a wishy-washy call, but I still think you can't cross-check him there. And then the worst one, Spallina, which somehow ended up being a 1-minute releasable penalty with that cross-check out of nowhere. Unnecessary roughness.
To a defenseless goalie, of all people.
Yeah.
I mean, that was unacceptable from Syracuse, and it seemed like the frustration of everything in this game really boiled over right to that moment. Syracuse obviously looked frustrated out there, especially, the way things were going. Like I said, they were getting dominated on the possessions. Syracuse was struggling offensively against a top 5 defense in UNC. The frustration was really showing, and that is not the way to show it, not at all.
No, the worst part is how they show that frustration. You can show frustration in 2 ways, right? The first of those ways being toughen up, take it, and make plays. Use that to fuel you on the offensive end. Maybe that's what they did for the last 3 minutes. I mean, I'm no wizard. I don't know what they did. But if you look at the end of this game and the end of last week's game against Duke, it's the same story where you are getting outclassed all day. You are getting out-physicaled all day. And instead of showing up in that moment and out-physicaling the other team for a span, trying to flip the switch and say, hey, guys, we're a tough team in our own right. Let's score some goals. No, they take cheap shots, and they jaw, and they celebrate, and this is the last thing you want at this point in the season. This is the final regular season game of the year, and you're going to do that.
Yeah, you're risking guys getting suspended when you need them the most with the ACC tournament coming up. And I think it all boils down to what we were getting at the beginning. You want to be Syracuse lacrosse. If Syracuse lacrosse is this perennial powerhouse that people talk about, I'm not saying it is. Mm-hmm. You have an expectation on you. You kind of have a chip on your shoulder to some degree. You need to lock in, and you need to realize that teams are going to play you tough. I would say for a majority of teams, playing Syracuse in the Dome especially is a game they have circled on their calendars. They're going to come in with everything they've got, and if you're going to be weak and you're not going to play hard, then this is going to be the result. But you have to bounce back, and you have to show, hey, we're not just going to be a pushover. We have to go in here and say, hey, we're the Syracuse lacrosse. We need to do what we need to do, and Syracuse is just not doing that.
We're talking physicality on the double overtime as Syracuse loses to North Carolina 14-12 to end the regular season. Get in on the conversation at 315-443-2011. That's the number to call. This is all, in my mind, kind of a microcosm of a much larger problem that has to deal with the offense. The biggest thing for Syracuse coming into the year was the fact that, the passing is their specialty. They don't have a downhill dodger. They're going to beat you death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? Move the ball, boom, 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 bang, score. Like, that's their deal. In the last couple of weeks, it has become clear that that is no longer Syracuse's objective, and they're going to take shots from very far away. That has not worked. So now, when you think about it, it's like, okay, if you're going to play kind of a stagnant offense, you better be physical. And you better take the ball to the mouth of the goal. They have not been doing that. And after every single game, right? Every single game in this losing stretch, these last 3 games, Gary Gait has said the same exact thing. He has said they have made more plays than we have. Well, what does that mean, right? Because Syracuse is just on the talent level of all of those teams, right? And you could say that, maybe some of the guys on this roster aren't at the same talent level. I mean, that's BS because they completely are. That's ridiculous. Those are top recruits. They just don't want it enough, right?
I don't think it's ridiculous to say that at all.
Yeah.
And I think that everything's kind of gone up in arms ever since Finn Thompson's injury. Now you have him back in the fray, but it seems like the offense has just kind of been trying to find an identity, and it felt like it was working its best when Peyton Anderson was in and playing at the X, not Joey Spallina.
Which is the physicality. Like, that all ties it back to that aspect. What does Peyton Anderson bring?
He brings physicality.
Exactly.
He drives the net.
Exactly.
If you're going to play this offense where you're not going to pass it around the perimeter and you're kind of just going to play iso ball to some degree, someone's got to go out there and make plays. I'm tired of watching Joey Spallina drive to the net, put his back, and then just take a stupid shot that goes 10 feet over the net.
Yeah.
You have to do more than that if you want to be this elite offense that you have the capabilities to do. You saw it earlier in the season, but Finn Thompson's injury really derailed that, and I'm hoping that now that he's back in the fray, you can kind of balance it out to some degree, but time's running out here.
Time is certainly running out. It's the last regular season game of the year. We'll talk ACC tournament seeding in just a moment, but I think the last thing that I really kind of want to close on this about in terms of the physicality is the fact that at this point in the season, how do you not take that up to another notch? That's my biggest question, is if you're in this position where I just lost to Cornell, okay, that they're a really good team.
They're the best in the country.
They're the best in the country. They showed why. Then at that point, the next week, you say, okay, I need to bounce back and beat Duke.
100%.
And they get out physical. They lost that ground ball battle by 1,000,000. And it was the physicality aspect. What is going to make it click for this team that you need to start being a little bit aggressive? They get pushed over no matter where they go, and they just take it out in undisciplined penalties.
It's unacceptable. It really is. You keep harping on it. We keep harping on it. One thing that was really annoying me in this game, and I've noticed it as a common theme on this little bit of a losing streak, you could call it a losing streak now because it's 3 straight losses to end the season, is the way that they've been playing on defense as well. Because there was a goal in today's game that made it 5-4 North Carolina where it was just Brevin Wilson was wide open.
Yeah.
Like, Syracuse had Brevin Wilson got the ball. There were 2 defenders that collapsed on him. They both went high, and he toe-dragged it right through them and had a wide-open shot on Jimmy McCool.
Yeah.
People have been blaming Jimmy McCool. How can you blame Jimmy McCool right now? He had to make 16 saves today.
Yeah.
Barely. He hasn't had... Yeah, what do you want him to do?
Yeah.
Is kind of my point here. Jimmy McCool has been under siege the last 3 games. Now, give or take, they're playing some really good offenses, but it comes down to this defense. This is one of the best units in the country, as John O'Derna likes to say all the time.
Yeah.
You gotta play harder. You gotta play with some physicality. Play like it means something. And it didn't feel like it meant anything. This is the ACC regular season finale. There's a lot on the table in terms of seeding.
Yeah.
Play your hearts out a little bit. Why don't you?
Exactly. I mean, if you come into the season, you look at those main 3 guys on defense. Riley Figueres was a big-time piece. And then you look at the 2 long pulls. I mean, Billy Dwan is a Twarton nominee right now. He's in the top 25. And then Michael Grace was one of the highest touted transfers in the country, a high pick in the NLL draft. I mean, that is a really good core 3 group of guys coached by John O'Derna, who just got poached by the PLL and is a guy that in 2 years will be a head coach somewhere. All of the pieces are there. What is happening? I personally think they're just not getting enough support from John Mullen. This is really the issue. And now this losing streak has put them in a bad position where they've tumbled all the way down to the 4 seed in the ACC tournament. They'll take on 1-seeded Notre Dame in the first round. That begins next week. I mean, at this point, the only thing that went right for them today is the fact that they did score first, right? They hadn't scored first in the last 3 games. But does it really matter?
I was about to say, big whoop.
Yeah, call in and tell us. 315-443-2011. That's the number to call. You can also text 315-556-3929. They finally score. Big whoop.
Yeah.
What happens?
It really didn't mean anything. And, you got to bounce off of that because coming into the game, you're facing Brady Wambach, who's one of the best Fogos in the country, especially in the ACC. Facing off against John Mullen, you knew you were going to struggle. You knew that if you let UNC play make-it-take-it lacrosse all day, you were in trouble. And they kind of did to some degree.
Yeah.
But getting that first goal was extremely important for Syracuse. It really was. But they didn't do anything with it, like you said. You have to build off that momentum. It is extremely a momentum sport, which we keep talking about, and Syracuse just has no momentum right now. It seems like no matter what they do, they cannot just find some consistency. You got to ride that momentum when you score the first goal, especially early on. A beautiful shot from Michael Leo. Take that and apply it to the rest of the game. Don't just sit back and fall flat on your face the rest of the game.
They got complacent, and, like you said, they allowed North Carolina to start playing make-it-take-it lacrosse once you go up one. I mean, these past couple weeks, the thought is, okay, they go down. What if they actually started these games up? What if they did break the first? What if they broke the seal? What if they did score first? And then all of a sudden we finally get that, and the answer is, oh, well, they're just going to get complacent after 1 goal and kind of lose there. John Mullen today, 11 for 26 at the X. John Rachuza, 0 for 2, but I mean, that was a given. Wambach went 16 for 27. These are 2 guys that are in the top 10. When you look at them, you go, oh, this will be a really good, even battle from X. It could not have been further from that.
And that's what you brought in John Mullen to be. You brought him in to be what Brady Wambach was today.
Yeah.
So to have that performance from John Mullen, especially when, that is his game, that is what he is brought in here to do, it's just not, you're never going to win a game if John Mullen is only winning 11 of 26.
I can't solve the puzzle of John Mullen. I really can't. If you look at the face-off guys that he plays in a week-in, week-out basis, I mean, every single game it's a, hey, he could win this, or hey, he could struggle here. Somehow he does the opposite each time, and then when it's a, hey, it's a coin flip, it never really seems to go his way other than the Notre Dame game. I think John Mullen is really good. Sometimes I also think John Mullen is really bad. I don't know what to think about John Mullen. I'm conflicted. I really, at this point, I can't even have an opinion because it's flipped back and forth so many times. Today was just another kind of bump in that roller coaster where, what can you even think about his performance on a game-by-game basis because he's not consistent.
I just really feel like it's a mentality thing for him and the entire team especially.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, you heard John Mullen say in one of the post games that he has a killer mentality when he goes out there in the face-off X, that he tries to kill the opponent or something like that.
It's easy to say that when you're winning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where is that gone?
Yeah.
If you have that mentality, fight a little harder at the X.
Yeah.
And I feel like the rest of the team doesn't have a fight. And we've talked about physicality. If you've got that fight in you, you're going to be more physical. It just doesn't seem like Syracuse has had any fight in it, especially in the last three as we tremble along here towards the end of the regular season.
I mean, at the end of that game, too, he started to kind of win a little bit more from X, and that jump started Syracuse's comeback, but it's full circle back to the beginning where we talked about those last 3 minutes, right? Could you imagine if they had done that for an entire game, what they did in those last 3 minutes? We would be looking at a completely different game than we saw, and it makes you wonder, right? You have Notre Dame next week. He did really well against Will Lynch last time, but who knows? He's been so inconsistent week in, week out. I think he's good, but now I don't know what to think.
Who knows what Syracuse team you're going to see next week?
It's also true.
Who knows which John Mullen you're going to see? Who knows which Joey Spallina you're going to see? Another day where he doesn't score a goal against an ACC team.
Yeah.
We've had this conversation all season long. Which Jimmy McCool are you going to get? He stepped up today. He had to. Otherwise, this game would have been a blowout.
It would have been a massive blowout.
So it all really does circle back to that. And Syracuse needs to get it together right now.
Yeah.
This is the moment where Gary Gate and his crew need to tell the team it's time to pull it all together. All that experience that you've had this season, the ups, the downs, that's what a regular season is for. Playoff time, you need to be at your best, and if you're not, you're never going to go anywhere.
1 week until playoff time. The ACC tournament just on the horizon. Syracuse will take on Notre Dame in the first round of that one. We'll talk more about that on the other side when the double overtime returns. We'll have you up until 8:30 here on 88.3. Don't go anywhere.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. You can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
The Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at waer.org or wherever you get your podcast.
On the next Putumayo World Music Hour,
We'll enjoy the soft melodies of samba canção and saudade, the acoustic side of Brazilian music.
Samba triste das incertas madrugadas.
I'm Dan Storper.
and I'm Rosalie Howard. Join us for Acoustic Brazil, the next Putumayo World Music Hour.
Sunday night at 11 on WAER.
On the next Putumayo World Music Hour,
We'll enjoy the soft melodies of samba canção and saudade, the acoustic side of Brazilian music.
Samba triste das incertas madrugadas.
I'm Dan Storper.
and I'm Rosalie Howard. Join us for Acoustic Brazil, the next Putumayo World Music Hour.
Sunday night at 11 on WAER.
Off to the left of Gianfrancaro, the netminder for UNC. Another pass straight away. Leo shoots and scores. For the first time in 4 games, Syracuse scores the opening goal.
We're back here on the double overtime up until 8:30 after number 11 Syracuse men's lacrosse falls to North Carolina 14-12. Dan Papillo alongside Hudson Ridley. And we're talking now, going a little bit more big picture after this loss, because this game meant a lot in terms of the ACC tournament up ahead and the seeding. And the loss now puts Syracuse at the 4 seed, setting up a rematch with top-ranked Notre Dame in Charlotte. And I want to know where your confidence is at, Hudson. And I want to know what the listeners' confidence level is at. They can call in 315-443-2011 to get your voice heard and let us know. Text in 315-556-3129. And also interact with us on YouTube and Twitter at W8ER Sports Talk. And Hudson, I just don't think your confidence can be very high right now.
No.
After what we've seen the past 3 games, and especially today in heading into the ACC tournament.
No, it's not high at all. I think part of the problem is, too, when you looked at the seeding implications for today, if Syracuse won this game, because Duke beat Virginia in overtime, really close game, if Syracuse beat North Carolina today, they would have played Duke and would have been the number 1 overall seed, right?
Mm-hmm.
They lose this game, they're the number 4 overall seed, and they play Notre Dame. Now, here is where I'm a bit conflicted. They were not even close against Duke. Notre Dame wasn't even close against Syracuse. But it goes back to what we were talking about. What kind of Syracuse team are you going to get? Because they blew the doors off of Notre Dame last time out. They could get the doors blown off them this time. My confidence is in the gutter after 3 straight losses.
Yeah, my brain is telling me to say that this isn't the worst-case scenario for Syracuse, saying that, they beat Notre Dame earlier this season. They have a good chance to beat them again. But you got to think about it, too. You know how hard it is to beat the same team twice? You talk about it in football all the time. And the adjustments are going to be made. And to your point, we just don't know what Syracuse team we're going to see.
Yeah.
That team that we saw beat Notre Dame a couple weeks back is not the same team as the one we have on the field right now.
Not at all, which is crazy because they added Finn Thompson back, and now they're still. And now you're arguing that they've gotten worse, which
somehow,
I agree.
some way.
Somehow they have figured out a way to get worse, and it's not on a talent level. I really don't think it is. I mean, it's hard to say that this team has gotten complacent. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's this joke made all the time about, is Syracuse back? It's like Texas with football, where they go, is Texas back? It's the same thing with Syracuse in men's lacrosse. It's the question, is Syracuse back? Every time Syracuse gets to the point where everybody says they're back, they prove why they're not back. This was the exact example today of why Syracuse is not back. And the frustrating part is they're on the doorstep of doing it. They could be so great. They could be such a great team, right? A lot of it can start on the offensive end in recent weeks of the fact that, these last 2 weeks they have not gotten a lot of support. Some of it can start at X. Some of it can start at defense, and once in these last 3 weeks, some of it can start with McCool. So then it starts with the whole team, and what do you do? I mean, you throw your hands up because it's almost an impossible problem to solve right now. I literally think this is something that is just, this can't really fully be solved by X's and O's. This is like I hate to say it. This is way deeper than X's and O's.
It feels like a mentality thing, right?
Yeah.
I like what you said there about the Texas and football comparison because it really does feel that way.
Yeah. At least Texas made the Final Four 2 years ago.
But very similarly to that note as well, coming into this season with so many expectations. Syracuse's lacrosse expectations were on the roof.
Yeah.
We were talking Final Four weekend immediately, and it's just not been the case. And you don't really know which way to turn. And those expectations, I think, kind of put the blinders on to some degree when you look at this season overall. Because 9-5 is not terrible. But if you told someone that Syracuse lacrosse was going to go 9-5 back in March or even back in February, they would not have been happy.
Yeah. I right now, when you look at the ACC tournament, I don't think there's a single team in there that I feel comfortable with them playing, which is a problem. When you look at the NCAA tournament as a whole, and you go kind of team by team of who they could play, I also feel uncomfortable. The one good thing in terms of the implications of next week is if they lose, the number 1 seed that they would most likely play would be Ohio State. In that regard, I like playing Ohio State, but anybody else is a 1 seed. I don't really love. Steve, we got Steve on the line from Syracuse. I mean, that was not a great game by Gary Gate. Your thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, a couple of things. I could see the game but couldn't hear it. So can you tell me why our last goal was not scored? I mean, is it where he landed in the crease?
Yes. So it was his arm that landed in the crease was the final, official reason why that goal was disallowed. Because those feet, as you could see, were outside, but it was his arm.
So where you land, I guess, I didn't know was that critical.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. It's down to that.
Yeah, and then not to go too negative here, but do you think coaching or Gary is just got a black cloud? I mean,
I don't think it's.
Why are we not answering the bell with this coach?
I don't think it's ridiculous to say that, honestly, Steve, because you look at it right now, and we were talking about it a little bit earlier, it seems like the mentality of this team is weak. It seems like the team is not fighting and playing with everything that they have. And to me, personally, I think that comes down to coaching. What do you think, Steve?
Well, just based on history, I really think that there's some kind of motivational factor that does not exist. And I mean, how much more talent do you really need?
Exactly.
The talent has been there forever. And Steve, we thank you so much for the call. And I just don't know where to go from here talking about this, Hudson. It just seems like the talent needs to match the expectations to some degree. The talent needs to play up to its expectations.
Steve brought up a point that I didn't want to bring up, but because Steve brought it up, I will say this. And this is no big shot at Gary Gate, of course, because I think, he's a good mind, he's a great head coach, and the players like him. I think when you talk about toughness and physicality, that comes from the motivation of a head coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
John O'Derna has the offense covered. John O'Derna has the defense covered, sorry. Pat March has the offense covered. Gary Gate does not really get involved too much in either end of that. Gary Gate is purely a player motivation recruiting coach, and he has done a great job at player motivation and recruiting in recent years. Here is the concern. Gary Gate right now has his dream job.
Yeah.
Where else would he rather be than coaching the program that he helped soar to national prominence, won championships at, and is the greatest player all time in program history? He comes in and revitalizes the program as a coach to the point where now the expectation is Memorial Day weekend. Gary Gate, getting to this point, has now kind of reached that dream. Is it fair to say that him maybe being a little complacent in that spot, because once you get to the top, there's not all that motivation, could that possibly leak into what we see with the team? Because there is a serious concern about these ground balls. They are getting beat up, right? Every single 50-50, they're getting beat up. They try to go to the crease, they get beat up. They go to the slot, they get beat up. And they retaliate late with these silly little mistakes. They don't come in motivated. They don't start games scoring goals. And every single week, the excuse is they don't make enough plays. Is it the fact that maybe Gary Gate just is not giving this team enough juice because he is at the point where he's always wanted to be?
I really think you hit the nail on the head there, Hudson, because it does come down to accountability to some degree. I mean, every single week, Gary Gate hits the press conference after a loss and says the same thing, like you said earlier today.
Yeah.
The other team made better plays. You need to take some accountability here and say, yeah, our guys are not playing well. They played like crap. You need to be that guy and say they need to figure it out. You know, you kind of have to light a fire. You need to light the fire. You see some of the most elite coaches in all of sports. Why are they elite? Because they know how to get their team going.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like Gary Gait has done that. I think today, after that Finn Thompson goal disallow, that was probably the most fired up we've seen Gary Gait all season. And even I think he was a little too light on that referee.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think the position that he is in, like I said, is kind of ideal for him. I don't necessarily blame the guy for, if he does take a little bit of like a more relaxed attitude, because that's who he is as a guy. Gary Gait is a very funny head coach. If you've never gotten the chance to actually listen to Gary Gait in a press conference, he jokes around. He's lighthearted. He has fun. When the rubber meets the road and you've lost 3 straight games, like Steve said, you have the talent to make this work at this point. What else is it going to take? I hate to rope Fran Brown into this. There's the accountability aspect of Fran Brown's acronym DART. There's a little bit of the toughness aspect in Fran Brown's acronym DART. And I hate to fully rope this in to football because obviously we're far from that. But if you remember back, the difference between Fran Brown and Gary Gait, because, the Syracuse area loves talking about Fran Brown. The difference is, before that Georgia Tech game at the beginning of the season, the team was called out for not being tough enough. The football team was. So what did Fran Brown do? He said, people don't think you're tough enough. Motivated the team, they got tough, and they won. If they see some kind of clip of this, maybe this is bulletin board material, because they haven't been tough enough. And that's something that if they want to win, they have to change.
We'll put a stamp in it this way. Syracuse lacrosse hasn't won a national championship since 2009. Something isn't working. Gary Gait has been here for a couple years now. It's been the same result. Something needs to change. We're going to have to hear another perspective on this. Jish Sokolsky will join us after the break, our talk reporter live from the Dome. Don't go anywhere here on the Double Overtime on WAER.
The beauty of jazz is any time is a great time to experience new aspects of the musical genre and appreciate its rich history. WAER's HD2 channel is a dedicated source for jazz music 24 hours a day. Available to stream at WAER.org or on your HD radio. WAER, your local NPR station from Syracuse University.
Off to the far alley for Petramala. 4 goals today for Petro, and make it 5 on that shot. A bouncer that beats McCool off to his left side.
Welcome back into the Double Overtime. Still 17 minutes here with you on 88.3. Hudson Ridley and Dan Papillo with you as Syracuse loses to North Carolina 14-12. And we welcome on our reporter still inside the Dome. It's Jish Sokolsky. And boy, Jish, I mean, in this one today, there were a lot of questions raised about the officiating.
Yeah, I was standing in front of some young fans, young Orange fans, and I'm surprised these 8 or 9-year-olds knew some of these words that they were flinging at the officials. It was crazy. I think back to the one penalty against Billy Dwan. Gary Gait was asked about this because he was beside himself about this. It was the 11th goal of the game for UNC. The guy's kind of diving at his legs. Billy Dwan has to dive out of the way, and they got him on contact to the head. 2 minutes unreleasable.
Mm-hmm.
I can see where the official's coming from there, but the reason UNC even had possession in the first place was off of a bogus call where Chuck Kaczynski is shoved in the back, loses the ball, and all of a sudden it's UNC's possession on some sort of violation against SU. So they move quickly from that and then almost make a dangerous play against Billy Dwan, and he gets penalized. Just throughout the day, the fans were letting the officials know that they were not happy with a lot of the calls. Some of them were a little questionable. I look back to that one in particular. That's the one that's on the top of my mind. But it would be – you would have to be pretty – I don't know. I think you would have to be very uncharitable to say that officiating had no part in a Syracuse loss today.
I was going to say, how much do you think that affected it?
Well, I think Syracuse at the end of the day still beat themselves. Syracuse – after going out to this hot lead, just somehow forgot how to play offense. But the officiating definitely didn't help them in that regard. It wasn't necessarily one-sided. I don't want to come on here and say, oh, the officials were biased. But there were definitely a lot of head-scratching calls, and time again, Syracuse was on the wrong end of it. Especially on that last goal that could have made it a one-goal game. Even Gary Gate was a little confused about this because it seemed as though his hands got into the crease when Finn Thompson was falling, rather than, just the stick, which would have been permissible. Instead, his hands fell in, and because of that happened, that was the nail in the coffin. So I think there were certain moments where the officials kind of stepped in and almost put their own stamp on this game, but you cannot fully or even put a majority of the blame on officiating. But it is something that has to be discussed when talking about this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, Jesh, it seemed like the officiating got into Syracuse's head down the line. It just seemed like, especially in the second half, there was just nothing from Syracuse. It felt like the gas was out of the tank really early on. I'm curious if you got anything on that.
Well, Dan, it just seems like there's so many different things that take the wind out of Syracuse's sails. This is a team that
100%.
cannot play from behind. This team gets way too emotional, way too frustrated, and does stupid things. Joey Spallina, yet again, had a late hit on a goalkeeper. That's been every game since the Notre Dame game. It feels like Joey Spallina's taken some cheap shot on a goalie outside of cage. You can't do that. I know you're frustrated. There was a skirmish at the end of the Cornell game. There was, words being exchanged at the end of the Duke game. You cannot be getting into these silly, petty arguments or committing these silly things when the game's out of reach. That's not going to make it any better for you. So, yes, you can blame the officials all you want if you're an SU fan, whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to put a mirror up and realize, man, this team is really bad at controlling its emotions.
Yeah. I mean, it almost feels, too, like why can't they take the emotion that they feel and the frustration that they feel and actually translate it to the field? I mean, that's the biggest problem right now. It's not showing at the field. And it almost kind of boils down, too, to each position group. When you look at, Dan brought it up earlier, John Mullen has this mentality that he says it's like kill everything. If you're frustrated, kill everything. Today, Wambach was just better, Jish.
And there was a clear reason why, at least from my vantage point, Brady Wambach has this stance that he gets into, and it's almost like his butt is parallel with the turf. He hinges at the hips so well where his butt just sticks straight out. He's got this nice low base where if the ball goes up in the air, he can spring up and collect it, or he can just push the ball past Mullen. He was doing that time and time again today. Mullen was kind of at a 45-degree angle with his hips towards the ground, and because of that, he kind of had to shovel out a little bit more rather than Brady Wambach, who had this nice pushing, fluid forward motion to win face-off. So we spoke to the UNC head coach, too, and it's just one thing that he noticed was his whistle discipline was really, really good today. Brady Wambach was very good at timing the whistle. They were giving them different whistles throughout the game, and Wambach was just on it more than Mullen was. And it was really frustrating in the first quarter because even though Syracuse went up 2-0, after they scored that second goal, it almost seemed like they never really got the ball back after that. And then that dominoes because then the defense gets tired. The defense starts committing silly penalties, and they start, you saw it definitely in the second and third quarter. They just seemed gassed.
Nowhere else will you get analysis of face-off butt height, but on the double overtime. If you have a question for our reporter, Jish Sokolsky, text in 315-556-3929. Jish, you mentioned earlier that the offensive start was not awful. How did they change that around? Did you feel like there was a reason why, or they were just, they struck first and that was what it was?
Hudson, it's almost like you're reading my mind. Let me answer that with a question of my own.
Okay.
What made the offense so good against Jacksonville early in the season? In the fourth quarter against Towson, what made the offense really good?
Ball movement?
Ball movement. Ball movement. You
See,
hit the
I'm in
nail
your
on-
brain,
You hit the
Jish.
nail on the head there, Dan, because in the first few possessions, they were spinning the rock like no tomorrow, finding the open lanes. That's exactly what this team is built for. I don't know who got into their head and convinced them. It must have been some bug or something that got into their brain and said, "Ooh, you're actually a downhill dodging team. Ooh, you guys should play hero ball even though you are 9 deep with great goal scorers. Don't cycle the ball around. You have to be the hero." And that's just what it felt like throughout the entire game. When someone would get the ball, they felt they had to score on it, and that's exactly what lost Syracuse the game. You have to realize, I'm not going to call anybody on the team selfish. I just think that they all have to realize that we are stronger together. Pass the ball around. Get the open shot. You do not need to create space for yourself. That is not your strong suit. There's not one player on Syracuse that I trust consistently to create their own space, get their hands free, and get a shot off. This Syracuse offense thrives on backdoor cuts, on off-ball movement, on catching and shooting when there's nobody in front of them. I cringe when I see Joey Spallina trying to back down somebody on the goal line. I cringe when I see Luke Roa trying to swim through 4 different UNC defenders to try and get his hands free. Just realize you're not that guy. We are a team. Let's cycle the ball around. That's how they scored their first 2 goals. And on that really ferocious run in the last 2.5 minutes of the game, that's exactly what they went back to. Gary Gates said this team stopped thinking so much, thinking about the mistakes, and just started cycling the ball around like they were doing in the beginning of the game. And guess what? You almost came back and won the game in an unprecedented fashion. I feel like I'm going insane sometimes watching this team.
Yeah, it all cycles back to that mentality, which we've talked about a lot on this show. We also talked earlier about the offense and how it's felt completely different since Finn Thompson's absence. But now with Finn Thompson back, you're hoping that things will kind of balance back out and the team will go back to what was working in those games against Jacksonville and Towson, like you said. But did you see anything different out there with Finn Thompson back in the lineup?
He's still getting his feet wet. He isn't necessarily the dynamic goal scorer he was. He's kind of limited in his movement, and I'm not talking about like physically, like from left to right, whatever, with his physical movement. I'm talking about like in the beginning of the season, you saw Finn Thompson kind of play from points a little more, the high wings. He was more hovering around the slot, the goal line. He was playing closer to the net this time, and that definitely helped him out. It resulted in 2 of his goals today, and the third one that didn't count. But I think Finn Thompson, the more he gets back up to game speed, the more they can move him around like a chess piece again. And I think that's where the offense thrives the best, when they can move guys like Joey Spallina and Finn Thompson around and don't have to glue them to a position.
One more quick one for you, Jish. The press conference after today, what was that like?
He came out, Gary Gate, he was very solemn. He said, I challenge my players these next 5 days to hold a mirror up and really look at themselves in the mirror and think what they can do to kind of snap out of this. It's been 3 games in a row that Syracuse has dropped. It almost seems like Cornell took the wind out of what once was a national championship caliber season for Syracuse. So Gary Gate is emphasizing these next 5 days before the team travels down to Charlotte to take on Notre Dame to really, really pull a mirror up and think about what exactly went wrong and how they can fix it individually.
Interesting. The man in the mirror may be the problem. The man in the dome right now, Jish, we thank you for your time. That was Jish Sokolsky on the double overtime. We've still got 8 more minutes for you until we reach the end of this. And Dan, that means it's time for our final words. I want to begin with you and your final word. This Syracuse team has been struggling. Why?
I'm going to start you out with a definition from the Oxford Dictionary.
Interesting.
Feeble. Feeble.
Can you use it in a sentence?
This Syracuse lacrosse team is feeble. That is my final word. But the actual definition, lacking physical strength, is the adjective's definition. This team doesn't just not have physical strength right now. They lack mental strength, and they lack physical strength as well. There's struggles on the offense. They can't score. They've scored in bunches. They score on drives, but they have not consistently scored. They struggle defensively. They lack physical ability defensively. Teams are walking right through them. Teams are going on crazy runs. They struggle mentally. They struggle to live up to the expectations of being Syracuse lacrosse. They struggle to keep their heads in the game, especially with emotions and getting over their heads and taking dumb penalties when it doesn't matter. This Syracuse team is feeble and weak. We mentioned Frank the Tank earlier. It's another word that he loves to use. Feeble, feeble, feeble. This Syracuse team is feeble, they are weak, and it needs to change right now if this team wants to live up to any expectations they had coming into the season.
You know, I do agree with that. I think overall, you know, this has been obviously a very negative double overtime, but it's hard not to be. My final word is a question, and this is just kind of a question directed at Syracuse men's lacrosse as a whole. Do you want this or not?
Sure,
this team was the preseason number 2. You have a slip-up against Maryland. Then you play Harvard and you lose, right? That makes you question, do you want this or not? They rattle off 6 in a row, including a big win over Notre Dame. And then that makes you think they want this. They lose 3 straight. Both of them, rather all 3 of them, getting out-physicaled in each and every game by a significant bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings you back to, do they want this or not? You have a chance to be the first national champion Syracuse has had in men's lacrosse in over 15 years because of your roster construction. This is no longer a, we need better players to win. This is not that. That's what this used to be for a long time, is Syracuse men's lacrosse needs better players to win. You've had high-level recruiting class after high-level recruiting class. Your highly touted 2022 class are now juniors. Joey Spallina is supposed to be the best player in the country by this point. And at what point do you look at yourself after these last 3 games and say, do I want this? Head coach Gary Gate, as you heard from our reporter Jis Sokolsky, is asking his team to hold up the mirror and ask themselves, do they want this? And so that is the question at large. You're still going to make the NCAA tournament. Your seeding depends on next week in the ACC tournament. In the meantime, between now and then, this team has a decision to make. Because if they want to win the national championship, they still have to win 6 more lacrosse games. Really 5 if they lose in the first round, but 5 minimum. The season is not over. You cannot act like it is. In these last 3 games, especially these last 2, and especially today, they have acted like it is. They can no longer do that if they want to win a national championship. There is still a chance for Syracuse to do this, Dan. Time is winding down.
It's go time now. If you want it so bad, if you want to get your head in the right place, this is the week to do it, because it's now or never with a team like Notre Dame in the ACC tournament right around the corner.
Yep, the next matchup for Syracuse men's lacrosse, the ACC tournament semifinals, Friday, May 2nd at 5 p.m. WAER's coverage of that starts at 4:30 with McClurg Remodeling countdown to face-off. Remember, the Orange took down Notre Dame the last time they played, 14-9 in early April, and now the tides could be turning. That's number 1 seeded Notre Dame and 4 seeded Syracuse in that one. If the Orange do win that game, they will go on to the next round to play the winner of Duke and North Carolina, 2 teams that the Orange lost to. So still plenty of road to blaze if they want to get to that point. Wrapping things up here on the double overtime, but before we go, a couple of thank yous to hand out. Our producer, Andrew Delapiana. Our engineer, AJ Myers, now a multi-time engineer, pushing all the right buttons on the board. Our reporter, Jis Sokolsky, who's still probably in the dome at this point. He'd have to be the Flash, I guess, to get out by that point. WAER Sports Talk Desk, Jack DiNapoli, Nate Martin, and Christian Doms helping out behind the scenes. And Syracuse loses to North Carolina 14-12. For Dan Papillo, I'm Hudson Ridley saying so long